getting started with Hubs page.
Yep.
With my name.
Ha! Okay, so I apologize to everybody because I just started the meeting now, which is why you were seeing the pre-live.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so technology is hard for me today. Anyway, you're presenting now. Just really quick, I'll go back over the announcements later, but and I apologize for not going live right away. We've got 20 attendees right now, and I've already introduced Sue. I'm going to let her start, and then I'll go over the announcements again at the end of the meeting. Thank you, Sue.
All right, so Dave, you can confirm that the attendees are seeing my slides.
Yes.
Okay. I wondered. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, well, you know, like I say, technology is hard.
All right, and you're looking at the live Q&A chat. So,
yes.
Okay. Just because I want to make sure, I'd love to make this as informal as possible. With only 20 people, I wish I could see everybody. That would be awesome. But since I can't, Dave is looking at the chat. That's how we're seeing you. He is going to stop me or signal me when I should take a break and answer a question. And I think there's about a 20-second delay when you're in a live event, so may not be totally real time, but I'd love to take questions along the way. And so again, my name is Sue Hanley. I'm an MVP in Microsoft Apps and Services, and I spend most of my time helping organizations build intranets. This will not be a technical talk, although gosh, I am crossing my fingers that I've made enough sacrifices to the demo gods that my demo today is going to work and that you'll be able to see it. So Dave, you're monitoring what the live event is seeing. So if for some reason my demo doesn't show up, you will let me know.
Exactly.
Or if my screen freezes or anything like that. And so today we're going to talk about hub sites. And I'm going to kind of take it back a little bit to the beginning. So if you haven't used hub sites before, you'll get a good sense of what they're all about. And if you have, hopefully I'll show you a few things maybe you didn't know. And I will, of course, talk about what's coming for hub sites and what was announced at Ignite. Let's see if I can advance my own slides. You know, sometimes, well, actually always, it's just better when the family is together. And unfortunately, during this pandemic, not many of us can see our families, although actually that little baby that you saw in my slides is now living with me for a while since daycare is closed. And we've now expanded our quarantine to include my daughter, her husband, and my granddaughter. And while we're talking about families, that's basically what hubs are. Hubs allow you to create families of sites. And I don't want you to confuse hubs with global navigation, but we'll talk about that in a little while. But before we really dig into hubs, I need to go back in time. And for those of you of a certain age, you may know who this is. Usually I ask people if they know who this is. Anyone want to put that in the chat? Dave, you can see if anyone does know who this is before I give away the answer. But this machine is the Wayback Machine. And what we're looking at is Sherman and Mr. Peabody. And they're going to take us back to talk a little bit about how we used to design our intranets. Hopefully you may recognize this type of an architecture. Key concept in modern SharePoint is that the world is flat. And we'll talk about what that means and why it's important. But back in the day, and back when we were on-prem, very often our intranets looked more like this. We had a top-level site collection, and then physically underneath that top-level site collection, we had, I don't even like to use this word anymore, the S word, subsites. And those subsites were physically connected to their parent site. And we either had a single site collection representing the entire intranet, or maybe we had one site collection that was the front door, and then a subsite for each department, and then a sub-site representing the team, the private team site for each individual departmental site. And we did use subsites for a reason. I mean, for the one thing, we could share content types We could share lookup lists. We shared a master page so that the entire family of sites could look like one another. We also were able to share navigation, and because permissions are stored at the root of that site collection, we were also able to share permissions. But in addition to those very small number of benefits, subsites caused really nothing but problems. The one thing we know about our organization that will change is the org structure. Move your sites around in the org, and you are going to break all the links that were pointing to the sites, assuming you could actually move your site out of one location and into another. If you had a hierarchy of subsites, which we often did, much more complicated than this, what I was showing, you may in fact find that the parent site is no longer needed, but you need all of the children's sites. Well, you can't kill a parent site if the children's sites are still alive. All kinds of problems with URL length, because each subsite creates an addition to the length of the URL. And the net result of everything is that subsites cause nothing but problems, a lot of them related to governance, because governance is scoped to the site collection. And at the end of the day, subsites were never really a great architectural approach, but we used them a lot in classic SharePoint. Well, the world of modern is flat. And in a flat world, that means one site for each discrete topic or workload or department or subdepartment, and every site is a site collection. So I no longer use the term site collection very often. When I use the word site, I truly mean a site collection, and that site collection has no subsites. The nice thing about this is because each site is independent, governance is managed at the site level, which gives us a lot more control and independence and for each one of those sites, and we can make our governance decisions based on what the business needs, not the physical structure of the site. And more importantly, because each site is contained in that entity, when we move things around in our navigational hierarchy, nothing breaks, because the site itself, that URL, is persistent and permanent. And so you'll get, in a new modern world, a world that is crowded with site collections. And in fact, that's actually pretty handy, because as our organization changes, we may in fact want to move the family into which a site belongs. And so the greatest thing about the modern architecture is that it allows us to move things around in navigation without harming any sites, URLs, or people in the process. Now, of course, sometimes we liked some of those features of subsites, and that's really what hubs are designed to do. They create a new kind of family in sites, and it allows us to create that connection, that connective tissue among a group of related sites and share some things about those sites. I'm going to take a small break here just to see if we have any questions so far.
No questions so far.
Okay.
And we had a couple people that knew who your cartoon characters were.
Oh, excellent. Good. Well, then I know how old you are, or what you do late at night. All right. So a couple of things about hubs. So hubs, again, allow us to create this new type of family. What they also do, this is actually my #1 favorite feature, is they create a scope. And you can use that scope to roll up content easily in the roll up web parts like events, highlighted content, and news. And they also create a search scope. And in fact, when you're searching for most sites in modern SharePoint, search looks at the site that you are on. When you search from a hub, the top of the hub family, you're searching across all of the sites that belong to the hub. And so search now gets sort of a layering effect where when you get your search results, if you don't see what you like, you can use the search breadcrumb to up-level your search to go to the site, to the hub that your site belongs to, and then ultimately to the organization that your site belongs to. One of the new features for hubs that was announced at Ignite in 2019, and we still do not have, but will get by the end of 2020, is the ability to connect hubs together. And that is called associated hubs. What associated hubs will do is create a fourth scope. The site you're on, the hub you belong to, the hub that hub is associated to, and ultimately the organization. So it will allow us to create a hub of hubs, if you will, which I don't totally love that concept, but it will essentially allow us to create a hierarchy of hubs. One important thing to know about a hub is that you as an individual site can belong to one and only one hub at a time. When you associate to a hub, things will happen. You will get the theme from the hub, and you will no longer be able to choose a theme for your site, because remember that sort of sharing a master page thing we used to have in the olden days or on-prem. We're going to get that same thing now with a hub. And so we will be able to control some consistent experiences. You can, on joining a hub, apply some scripts and design so that when you join my hub, you're going to get some capabilities that I'll pass on to you based on my hub status. You can, as the owner of a hub, either have your hub created so that anyone can join it, or you can turn on a hub approval so that when someone wants to join your hub, you can say, no, thank you, not wanting you. And that basically creates a Power Automate flow automatically for you that will allow you to approve hubs. All of that happens by the creation. You determine all that when you create the hub, which is done from the admin center. And so while you may say, I'd like to be a hub, unless you are also the admin of your tenant, you will not be able to make that hub happen. So let's talk a little bit about sort of what that means. And from an intranet perspective, let's all bring it back to my world. Hubs really allow us to extend the type of sites that we can use to build our intranet. So we use team sites to collaborate with small groups of people. We use communication sites to broadcast information to a wide audience. And then we can use hubs, which are technically not a type of site. Hub is really a superpower wrapped around either a communication or a team site, but normally a communication site. It's a superpower that a site gets, and that gives you some extra things that you can control when the site we're talking about happens to be the head of that family. And as I mentioned earlier, I like to think of associating to a hub. The technical term is association, although I think of it as being join. Associating to a hub is really making a contract. And the contract is the following. Hey, hub owner, whatever theme you've picked, I'll take it on my site. I will ask you to put me in the navigation, or I'd like you to put me in the navigation for the hub, but joining a hub does not automatically get your site in the hub's navigation. Now, one of the benefits of a hub is that it does create a shared navigation layer across all the members of the hub family, but associating to a hub doesn't get you added there. Only the owner, the administrator of the hub, can actually add a site to the navigation. It does automatically put me in the search scope, and it automatically will put me in any roll-ups where the source of the roll-up is at all sites in the hub. And the reason I added this little caveat about not talking too much is from experience. So if you are creating a hub and you have a bunch of communication sites rolling into the hub, and the source of your news web part is all sites in the hub. If one site, let's just say, for example, it's Maria in IT. If she posts a lot of news and we're using a web part that can show, the most you can ever show in a news web part is 12 items. If Maria is posting 6 and 7 items a day, when finance has an important article to post, by the time the end of the day has happened, that news article has been demoted because the way news rolls in is based on first published date. So last in is going to show up on top. If one site is posting a lot of news articles and we're in a roll-up situation for news, they're going to be overtaking all of the news articles posted by one of their sort of sibling colleagues in the hub. And so when I say you're promising not to talk too much, if you have about 6 different things to say from your site and you are a hub, you may want to combine a few of them so that you're posting less frequently, or in a new capability for site pages, you could schedule some of those articles to appear either later in the day, so you're not overtaking everybody else's announcement, or maybe schedule them to occur once a day over a period of 5 or 6 days. Okay, so again, I'm going to show you a brand new capability called Hub Permissions that allow you to say, hey, if I'm part of your site, if there are people who are readers of the hub, I'd like them to read my site. And where this comes into play is, imagine that you have a team site. And that team site, of course, is private to just the members of the team. But your team site belongs to a department, and your deal is, if you work in that department, you'd like everyone can have read access to the content of your team site. You don't want to add them as members of your team. They don't need to participate in the chat or anything like that, but you want them to have visibility into your documents. One way to do that is to set up a permission group at the hub, and when you join those teams sites to the hub, you can choose to take the hub reader group, a special permission group just for the hub, and give that group of people read access to your site. This is a game changer because I've been asked on multiple client scenarios, can the 5 people in the leadership team need read access to every piece of content, no matter where it is. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can add them as a visitor to every site after it's provisioned. You can make it part of your manual provisioning process, or you can associate those sites to a hub, have a reader group, and then they will automatically get read access to anything associated to the hub. And I'll demonstrate how that works in a little bit.
Sue?
Yeah.
We have one question. So the question is, so you can create hubs under Teams admin site, or can it still be created under a SharePoint admin site?
No, you can only create hubs from the SharePoint Admin Center. Hubs are not a Teams concept. They are a team site concept. So you cannot make a team a hub. That concept doesn't exist. Only SharePoint entities can become hubs. So the team site associated with your team is actually, you manage that from the SharePoint Admin Center. And that site technically could be a hub. Although I wouldn't recommend that because it's going to be it could be very confusing. But yes, you can have a team site be a hub.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully that clarified. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about actually my favorite announcement from Ignite, which is the fact that we are going to get global navigation for all of SharePoint. So today, many organizations create just one hub for their organization. They join all of the sites to that one hub. And the reason they do that is because what they really want is global navigation. They would love it if they could use more than one hub. So as an example, almost every HR group is going to need an HR hub with multiple sites because different people are managing benefits, compensation, talent acquisition, and there's probably a manager portal that only managers can get to. So there's 4 instance sites that probably should be associated to a main HR hub. If you only have one hub for your organization and each site can only belong to a single hub, you can see that your architecture is going to get a teeny bit complicated because again, until we get associated hubs, a hub can only associate to one other hub and a site can only belong to one hub. And you're going to have to really think carefully about what you want to do. If your outcome goal is global navigation, then what you want to do is wait for a new feature that will be added by the end of this year, which is the ability to have persistent global navigation across all sites in your tenant using the new SharePoint app bar. And I think I have a slide on that, but that will allow you to take the navigation from your home site, ideally the root of your tenant, and propagate that everywhere, not at the top, but actually in a left-hand rail. So we won't necessarily have 3 navs on every site, local, hub, global. It will actually be 2 navs and then a left rail for that global navigation. You can't, sorry, yeah.
So one other question here. Do you have to create the site first and then change it to be part of a hub? Or I think the answer is that hub is a separate object than a site. And so you would create a hub object and then you would add a site to the hub. Is that correct?
You would create a site, and you can create it from the admin center so that you're effectively doing it at the same time. You make one click and say, make this site a hub. Then from that, so it's all, you can do it from the admin center, or if you've opened up site creation, you can create the site from the SharePoint start page and then go to the admin and say, hey, could you make this a hub? So you can only hubify from the admin center, and depending on your provisioning model, you can do the whole thing at one time.
Okay.
So you don't have to, in fact, you probably, yeah, you may actually want to do that. One thing I should tell you is that before you can associate a site to a hub, the person making the association must have read permissions to the hub. And so there's a configuration order, like a going live order. The hub should go live first, or there won't make much sense connecting the rest of the members of the family, or at least have them go live at approximately the same time. Okay, so 2,000 hubs per tenant. So we started out with 50. Now you really shouldn't have to worry about the number of hub sites in a hub. Okay, so let's talk about who can hubify and how that works. And literally this morning, we identified a problem with this whole who can associate to a hub that I think our admin had actually done incorrectly, at least against what we had decided as a governance team. So when you create a hub, you are also saying at that moment who can associate to the hub. You have two choices: make it open or limit it to a selected group of people. You can limit it, but if you do that, you may find, because you can't predict when you create the hub how many people are going to, how many site owners may want to associate to it. If you restrict who can associate at the instance that you create hubs, you could create a scenario where what we had was Rosemary created a site. She works in the oncology business unit. Rebecca asked for the oncology main site to be a hub, but Rosemary couldn't associate her new site to the hub, even though she happened to be an owner of that hub. But when the hub was created, the admin said the only people who can associate to this hub is the admin team for the client plus one person, Rebecca. So Rosemary, who actually owned the hub, couldn't join one of her own sites to the hub. And that's because it's very hard to predict when you're creating a hub who all the site owners might be who want to connect to them. So that's something to think about. The other issue is this whole concept of who has permission when you join a hub. So one thing I should make clear: when you associate to a hub, nothing today, actually, when you associate to a hub today, nothing happens to the permissions on your site. So if you join my hub and I do not have access to your site, I will not see your content. Your content will not roll into anything on the hub, period. Nothing changes about the permissions on your site when you associate to a hub, unless the following two things happen. Number one, I, as the owner of the hub, establish a reader group for the hub, which is effectively a fourth permission level. So, you know, on most communication sites, most SharePoint sites, we have owners, members, and visitors. If I'm a hub, I can have another permission level called hub visitors. You now want to join my hub. When you join, you will see the option of accepting my hub reader permissions. If you say yes to that, anyone who is in that group can read your content. They cannot see your team chat if this was a team site created from Teams, but they can read all the documents on your site, they can see all the lists on your site, and they can request access potentially to your team. And so you really want to choose whether that is what you want to do. So it's an additive permission. If you leave the hub, like unjoin the hub, that permission level goes away. And if that's how I was getting read access to your site, I will no longer see the content.
We did have a question on
Sure.
navigation.
Yep.
So how does left-hand global nav affect modern team sites that already have a left-hand menu?
They're going to get, it's a team site, I believe, will see an additional, they're going to have left-hand nav, which is local nav, and then they'll see an additional narrow left-hand rail, teeny, tiny, skinny, managed by icons. And the icons only expand when you click on them. So it'll be out of the way until you need it.
Okay, and then will the global app bar also work on classic page sites, or?
That is a really good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to bet that it will, but I don't know the answer to that question. You're going to have to wait until we get that or ask someone in Microsoft.
The comment was that they found that the hub site navigation doesn't show up on classic page
Correct.
sites.
That's exactly why one of the reasons you can technically join a classic site to a hub, but you will not get all the benefits. I think I had a slide on that.
Sure.
You know, the bottom line is get your sites to modern. That is what I'm just going to tell you. You want all these goodies, get to modern. That is the goal. Classic, my favorite quote ever was from Lincoln Damaris at Microsoft on a podcast. Classic is dead like Latin. It's going to get security updates only, but if you want the good stuff, you want to be on a modern site.
Sure.
So get there. Okay. So there's a huge implication, I think, for hub permissions on teams, because what I noticed is if you have a private team that you really want to keep private, if you give read access to the content, it will not add people as visitors to your team. But if the team site itself has a link to the team chat, I can actually request access to your private team to add me to the team. You have to decide if that's really okay. So again, there's no kittens are going to die. It's not going to be super harmful if that happens, but you have to make the team owner aware of the fact that they may get these strange access requests because their site has been associated to a hub that has broader permissions. Okay, so now I have to make a sacrifice to the demo gods and hope that this is going to work. First, Dave, I just want to clarify, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
And now it should look like global sales.
Yeah.
All right. So what I first want to do is show you kind of the newest feature for hubs, which is the ability to have this reader group for a hub. So I'm the site owner on this particular site. So if I go to site permissions, you see I have a new pivot on my site, and that allows me to have hub permissions. And what this says is sync hub permissions to associated sites. So if I turn that on, I get to create. Now, initially, we only have one type of permissions, read. Eventually, they may, I think the next one they are going to probably enable is owner permissions. So here, I can say, all right, join my hub, and I will let the everyone. So you join this hub. And I don't care how private your content is, if you take my permissions, everyone in the organization will have read access to your site. All right, so that is step number one. So that is a new feature, and usually you're going to set that to everyone, but sometimes you might set that permission to your leadership group or something like that. So you can use any pre-existing group. A mail-enabled security group will work, or an existing Microsoft 365 group, or the everyone group as well. All right, so now let's go to a site and let's look at what it means to be part of a site and then take on those permissions. So as I said, so just to reiterate, this is where right down here on this little left rail is where global permissions are going to show up. So they won't take over the left navigation for a team site. So notice a couple things about this site. Number one, it's a team site. How do I know that? Because it's got left navigation. Number two, notice that it's blue. And if I go to change the look, I will have the option to change it to whatever I want to change it to. And so what I'm going to do on this site is I am going to go to site information. And I am going to say, no, my global sales site was set up as open, which means as long as Sue is the owner of Mark 8, I will see any open, look at all those open site collections. So I can join any one of these hubs that I want. I'm going to choose to join global sales. And here is my option. I have the option of syncing the permissions or not. If I do sync the permissions, I'll say yes to this. What that will mean is that even though Dave wasn't invited to be on the Mark 8 project team, he will now have read access to my site, simply because I added that reader group to this site's permission level. And again, it's a 4th level of permissions. And now if I say save, if everything is working correctly, the site should flip to green because the color is being determined, the theme is being determined by the parent site. And magically, thank God, it totally worked. So did you notice that now my blue site is now green? And then I also now got this additional level of navigation. Here's my local nav. Here's my hub nav. And then eventually my global nav will be on the left-hand side.
Question on the reader group.
Yep.
Can a site owner that is joining a hub not accept the hub reader group?
Correct. Great question. So if I don't want your damn permissions, I do not have to take them. So when I am associating, or after, by the way, I can say no to that. Sorry, I can just unsync it. And unsyncing it doesn't change anything else about my association to the hub. And what I should show you right now is that, so now we actually know that we have a 4th level of permissions. And I believe that if I go look at the site permissions on Mark 8, I get a new pivot here. So I not only see what's the permissions on the site that I'm on, but I also have this pivot as well. I can write from here, see who's in it, and then I can also write from here, unsync it. So hopefully that answers your question. So I want to give you a bit of a caveat. So let me switch back to my, that was my demo. Does anyone know? This is a pretty simple demo. I'm going to switch back to my slides to see if that magic will work. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them.
No new questions.
Good. Let's see if I can reshare.
So like you said, everybody's about 20 seconds or so behind, so
yep,
still might come in.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. So you'll get all the hub nav, but maintain separate permission levels.
You will get the hub navigation, and as I said earlier, you never, ever, ever lose your site permissions when you associate to a hub. What you can do is get an additive level of read permissions. That's really important. Read only permissions on your site if you choose to accept accept the hub permissions when you join. So hopefully that makes sense. Now I want to just warn you about something. Let's say you already have hubs set up in your tenant. If you have a hub and there's a bunch of sites joined to it, and you create a hub visitor permission and you say at the hub level, sync permissions to associated sites, all the sites that have previously been connected to you are going to get your permissions. You're not getting the option to turn it off or on if you already have a hub and there are 50 sites associated with it. If again, it's pre-existing only. If it pre-exists the ability to turn on hub permissions, you will be pushing your permissions to all 50 sites. If 2 of those 50 sites, this was my scenario this morning, are super private and they don't want your permissions, what you can do is immediately go to those sites and desync the permissions or unjoin them from the hub, apply the permissions, then rejoin them from the hub, and don't accept those hub site permissions when you join. So hopefully that will make sense. So you have an option. The only time you really have to worry about this is if you've got a pre-existing site family and now you want to turn on this brand new feature. So I wasn't sure how that was going to work, and we proved it very scarily this morning, and then immediately took off those permissions so that we wouldn't mess up anything. We wouldn't be giving access, actually, to a site that should never have had everybody reading that site. The other thing you should do, and I think this is really important, is you really shouldn't have to worry, I don't think, about allowing people to associate to your hub. I think if you turn on, as a hub owner, you're allowed to do this. If you turn on hub approval, then no one's going to be able to join your hub unless you say it's okay. To me, that makes things a lot easier from an admin perspective. So one thing that is also important to note is, in order to see hub site settings on the site, you must be the site collection administrator of the hub in question. So we had an interesting use case this morning where Rosemary was transitioning her responsibilities of managing the main hub to Rebecca, and she made Rebecca a site owner, but Rebecca had no privileges to edit the hub navigation or do anything to the hub until we made her a site collection administrator of that site. So typically, site owners can do pretty much anything, but the person who is in this case, we were calling her the goddess or the queen of the hub, that person must have site collection admin privileges on the hub site itself. And that is not, I couldn't find where that is truly documented anywhere, so it's just important to know that. One of the other great capabilities we now have for hubs is to be able to look at usage data of the hub as a family, and that's a relatively new thing. So we now have capabilities to look at each site. So the site owner of each site can look at the hub, the usage data on their individual site, and if you go to the hub site itself, you can also see usage data on the hub as a family. So that's sort of my technical, what is a hub and how do you do all those things. And I want to spend the rest of our time together talking quickly about sort of how you should think about hubs and what makes sense. I think we have about 15 minutes left, am I right?
Yep.
Good. All right. So I'm going to kind of fly through this. All right. Thinking about a hubs really starts with planning. What should you hub? And I'm just going to throw out 3 possible models. You can try to throw any example at me that you want. I have never been able to not fit every possible scenario into one of these 3 models. You're either going to create a hub to represent an organizational or a functional entity. HR as an example. HR the function or HR the department. Legal might be a hub. Finance is often a hub. Geography. So we often make hubs in large global organizations to create a location-specific intranet, like Inside Austria. And one kind of a naming tip that I've used in some organizations is you want to think about what should you name the hub. No, it doesn't really matter, but it's kind of nice to indicate that something is a hub. So some people use like Austria Hub, literally in the name, or Austria Web, or something like Inside Austria, meaning I'm a site for people who work in that location. The third type of hub is something that I call a portfolio type of hub. So imagine that you have, your organization is a consulting organization and you have lots of clients. And for the clients that you work with, each one of them has a template for a presentation. You have people assigned to the client account team. You could even be a sales type of organization. You may want to create a hub for each client and then associate all the projects that you're doing for that client into that kind of client portfolio scenario. You could also think of a major intranet renovation project, and each sub team is associated to the program portfolio. Another sort of portfolio model, kind of a variation on the portfolio model, is to create a hub called Archive and take all of your sites that are no longer active and move them to an archive hub. So you have a whole bunch of different ways to think about hubs, but I think they're going to fall into one of these 3 models. And thinking about each one, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on each model because I will make these slides available, is really what your planning is all about. Sort of what should be a hub. And while we're there, I talked a little bit about sort of how should you name your sites. I think naming conventions are critically important for the following reason. When you are in a modern scenario, and again, hubs are only available in SharePoint Online, When you create a site, you are making a land grab for the URL. What you don't want is someone to create a team site called IT before the intranet team has a chance to make the IT communication site. Because when that happens, that URL, IT, has already been taken by a small group of people. And when you're ready to create your intranet site, it's no longer available to you. So one thing you may do, depending on your deployment strategy for going to the cloud, if you're not there yet, is to try to make a land grab for the comm sites that you're going to need to build your intranet, the comm sites and the hubs that you'll need to build your intranet, so that sites like IT, finance, HR, that URL is not available when someone wants to create a team. There are some automated naming capabilities that you can use in Microsoft Teams and when you're creating team sites, or you can just ask people to put the word team in the name of the sites that they're creating. So it just depends on your licensing model and where you are in your level of maturity.
I had some questions about the levels, the number of levels that are available in hub sites.
One, you can belong to one hub, period, end of discussion.
No, how many levels in the hub? So like you have a company level hub site and then departments underneath that? Or
no,
not?
Hubs are a flat structure.
Okay.
We will soon, by the end of the year, have a concept called associated hubs. But a hub, everybody in a hub, we're all at the same level. I just get to be in charge of how you look. So that's why it's really a hub and spoke model. Each site belongs to one hub. The hub can't belong anywhere else today. That's it, top of the line. It doesn't go anywhere. By the end of the year, if there is another hub that might in fact be a company, or think of it as a department hub, and this is a sub-department hub, we will be able to connect those two hubs. But right now, hub is it. There is one level. You're a site and you're associated to a hub. That's it. So by the end of the year, we will be able to take a hub and associate it to another hub, which may, in that vernacular, may in fact create a second level. Global navigation may or may not have anything to do with hub association. It is merely a navigational concept. And that's what's really important. Hub does create a hierarchy, a collection, and a scope, but it is a roll-up kind of scope. The hub navigation is different from hub association because you can be part of a hub and not in the navigation. And if I leave your hub and I'm in your navigation, the link is not going to break, but I may go join another hub's family. That link is still going to work. Any link to me will still work, but I'm not part of your hub. Navigation and hub association are separate concepts right now.
Okay.
And while we're on the concept of navigation, the navigation for the hub site itself lives above the local navigation if you're a communication site, and if you're a team site, nav is on the left and the hub navigation is on the top. Nav, as with all nav in all of SharePoint, navigation can have up to 3 levels, and because a hub nav is at the top, hub navigation can be hub navigation can have all 3 of those levels, and it also can be a mega menu. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of what should be in hub navigation. So there's really 3 options. You can be in the shared navigation and associated to the hub. As I said, you can be associated to the hub and not be in the navigation. And then you can be in the navigation and have nothing to do with the hub. And very often that is something that you want to do. So let's talk a little bit about the first one. So the benefit of associating all of the family members in the navigation is that you get visibility into who belongs to this hub. But if you are associating a private site to a hub, whether or not you're going to give people read access, the question is, what do you want to do in that case? Should you associate a private site to a hub? And the answer is you can, because we can now target navigation to a particular audience. So if you have that site and it is a modern site, you can target the navigation to the members group of that modern team site. Communication sites don't have a group. that you can target to. So what you need to have an audience created in advance, and an audience can be a mail-enabled security group, a group that you set up in Azure AD, or an existing Microsoft 365 group. So if you would like to target navigation, you can target that navigation to a group. And then I always recommend that you also stick a little emoji in there, or the words private or restricted, usually both, so that if I do see it, I know that I am seeing it because I'm in, as opposed to not seeing it. And if you'd like to know how to do this emoji thing, it's the easiest thing in the world. You can go to emojipedia.com, grab an emoji that you like, stick it in a nav link, you can stick it in a folder name, you can pretty much stick it anywhere, or Windows key period, and you can get right in the context of your work a collection of emojis to look at. So Windows key period pop up. I'm going to drag this onto the screen so hopefully you can see it.
Maybe during when you're discussing about, could you talk about what your recommendations would be for associating different hub sites to each other right now?
Yeah, I'm going to talk. I'll show you a little. Right now, you can't really associate hub sites together, but you can link them in the navigation. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. All right, so let's get that. So one is every time you associate somebody to your site, you add them to the navigation. And then if you don't want people to see a link because it's not relevant, you can use audience targeting. I'm not going to spend much time on that, but you have to have an audience first, and then you could target the site. So the other is associate the site, but don't show it in the navigation. And typically we would do that if something is like super top secret, but I think once you have audience targeting, you probably don't need to not show it in the navigation, but there may be a period in which a site has joined and it's part of your roll-ups, but it's not explicitly reflected in the hub navigation. And another reason for that is that it is not a nav-worthy, it's kind of a sub-family to one of your sites, and it doesn't really belong in hub navigation. You will discover it when you go to the site that is linked in the nav. In other words, it's just not important enough to be in the navigation. And then finally, the last scenario is you can add a site to the nav, but it's not part of the hub. And this you will do for a couple of reasons. One is extranet. So you would not join an extranet site to a hub, because if you do that, all your partners are going to see your hub navigation, even if they don't have access to it. And so you may want to have that site be linked in the navigation for a hub so that employees can easily find all the extranet sites, but partners don't know that they are, partners don't see the other sites. So the hub navigation, the navigation in your hub can show sites that aren't in your hub. And that's the concept really for associated hubs. That if I can show a link to other hubs, and when I go to the other hub, I am leaving my hub, but I will be able to easily navigate up and down a tree of hubs. One level tree of hubs, if that makes any sense. So associated hubs are not yet available. They are, I said earlier, they are targeted for the end of 2020. And I am in this special preview group, so I got hub permissions early, and I'm still waiting for associated hubs. So to see a little bit about associated hubs, you're probably going to want to watch, there's a link I think I have at the end to one of Melissa Torres's sessions at Ignite, where she introduces sort of concepts for architecture in modern sites. So just to kind of wrap this up quickly, I think I talked about the fact that you don't have to have more than one hub, but you can. And you can start with one hub if you want, and then expand as you move forward. And so just to sort of see, sort of, as I said earlier, if what you really are trying to do is get global navigation, here is what global navigation is going to look like. It will be a little rail on the left-hand side of your site. And this will show up whether you are a team site or a communication site. And this is how the navigation, the global navigation, will pop out when you need it. This is scheduled to be released by the end of 2020. And just to see a little bit more about what's in, this is a kind of a crappy screenshot that I made from a video, but to see what's available in, these are the 4 different elements of the app bar. So any questions about that?
No questions.
Okay, great. I'm just going to kind of quickly talk about just 1 or 2 more things. So let's talk a little bit about what can be on the home page of your hub. I mean, you are going to want to plan the experience for your hub home, just like you will on any other kind of site. And so you'll want to think a little bit about who am I presenting this content to, and what do they want to do, and what's really important to them. As you're deciding about what should be a hub, I think this is really the primary question that people really want to think about as you're planning your architecture. Again, you don't have to be part of a hub to be visible or searchable or to be presented in a navigation or even to roll up anywhere. In general, I'm going to make a hub if I want a shared search scope, shared navigation, and typically there's going to be, and I have a dynamic collection of sites. There's going to be lots and lots of sites to be associated to that concept. I'm usually not creating a hub if there's not more than a couple of sites. So 5 to 10 is very, very arbitrary. You could have a hub for 2 or 3 sites, but you may not need it for 2 or 3 sites. The ultimate hub really might be thought of as the home site. And I think that's really a concept that doesn't necessarily have to be used, but you can make the home site for your intranet a hub. And again, if you join every single site to that hub, then you are effectively creating global navigation. But until we get associated hubs, and this is kind of a, oh, should you do this? Because if the home site is the hub, you can't also have an HR hub and have that experience be consistent on the HR sites. So you do want to think about user experience and what people are going to see when they are going to your hub. So I'm just going to wrap it up by saying it really takes a village when you're planning hubs. The information architect should really be involved in planning what should be a hub and how many hubs should we have. They can't be created by the IA unless that person is also the global admin. Hub owners are going to decide what goes on their hub, and finally site owners are going to determine which hubs I join unless that's been restricted, and who has access to my hub. So that's basically my summary. So a few takeaways that you guys can read. Just remember the world is flat and changing, and hub before you sub. So as you're planning your modern intranet, you definitely want to think hub sites, not subsites. And there are all the different ways that you can contact me. And there's 2 slides at the end of my slide deck. And Dave, I don't know how you share slides, but I will get you the slides.
Yeah, so crazy thing is my internet dropped.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if I honestly don't know if the meeting is still going on. I'm watching it in another window, and you're still talking, but I don't know if anybody else can hear me because I don't see the actual meeting thing. So,
okay.
Like I said.
Well, do you have a way of sharing the slides? Because we wanted to make sure that there's an article about planning hub sites, and then I've got a whole collection of resources, including that Ignite presentation that I referenced earlier. So I will share the slides with you, and in case people did get cut off at the very end, I'll make sure you have all these.
Sure, great. If you just send me the slide deck, I'll post it to our website where people can get access to it. And then, like I said, the recording was also going to be on our YouTube channel. So, which I did share the link before I lost connection. So at least the link is out there. And hopefully everybody will see it. And hopefully it's still going, because according to this, the meeting is still going. So hopefully it's still broadcasting. I just can't tell right now. but I really appreciate it. I'm going to share. I'm going to share my content and share these slides again.
All right, so I'll stop sharing.
And hopefully, let's see here. Can't tell. Okay, I can't tell if anybody's seeing this, but our November meeting is November 12th, and we're talking about SharePoint Online Customization Toolset. Our December meeting is December 11th, and we'll be talking about embedded user experience. We always need speakers, so please submit some presentations that you'd like to give the group or some topics also via our website. We have forms on our website where you can submit topics, requests, and we'll try to find speakers for that. I am sorry, I can't. It looks, I've been watching the broadcast here, and it does look like the whole slide presentation worked, even though I don't have the same interface as I did before. So I believe it's still being broadcast. Technology is not cooperating with me today. But anyway, Sue, I really appreciate it. Thanks for volunteering to speak at our user group, and hopefully we'll have you back again sometime.
Do you want me to post the slide deck to the team?
I think if you just send it, I can put it on our website, and
all right, I'll email
to go to the website for those things.
Okay, I'll email it to you.
All right, thank you again, Sue, and
right,
thanks
bye-bye.
everybody for attending. All right, we'll see you. Bye.